Wales is full of beauty, green valleys, dramatic coastlines, mountains that look painted by hand. But hidden between all of it are places this country would rather you didn't know about. Drowned villages, military ghost towns, entire communities wiped off the map and never spoken of again. These are 13 ghost towns in Wales you're not supposed to know. And number 1 is still making people angry 60 years later. If you're the kind of person who wants to see what the rest of the world forgot, subscribe to Dust and Stories right now. You don't want to miss what's coming. Number 13. Rhosydd. Near Btws Coed, tucked into a wooded valley, there's a village most people drive straight past without knowing it's there. Rhosydd sits on the route of Sarn Helen, an ancient Roman road that once connected Merioneth to the Conwy Valley. Slate quarrying brought workers here in the 1800s, but when the quarries closed in the early 20th century, the miners drifted away and never came back. Their cottages and chapel were left standing empty in the trees. The Landmark Trust eventually rescued a couple of buildings and turned them into holiday rentals. But step just a few feet beyond the renovated cottages, and you'll find the rest of the village exactly as the miners left it. Roofless walls, doorways opening onto nothing, and forest slowly swallowing everything. Number 12. Culver Hole. On the Gower Peninsula, hidden inside a natural cave in the sea cliffs, there's a structure that nobody can fully explain. The Culver Hole is a 60-foot stone wall built directly into the mouth of a cave. It's been abandoned for centuries. Some historians believe it was a medieval dovecote, a place to keep pigeons for food. Others say smugglers used it to hide contraband. A few think it was a fortified lookout post connected to a nearby castle. The truth is, nobody knows for certain. What we do know is that it's one of the strangest abandoned structures in all of Wales, and most people who live within 20 miles of it have never heard of it. Number 11. Kilvey and the Lower Swansea Valley. For over 100 years, the Lower Swansea Valley was one of the most polluted places in Britain. Copper smelting, zinc processing, nickel refining. The factories pumped toxic fumes into the air day and night. When the industries finally shut down in the mid-20th century, they left behind a poisoned moonscape, slag heaps, contaminated soil, entire streets where no one could live anymore because the ground itself was toxic. Much of the valley has since been cleaned up and redeveloped, but if you know where to look, you can still find traces of the industrial ghost town buried beneath the new buildings, abandoned foundations, old smelting walls, and soil. Number 10. The Rhondda Valley Mining Villages. The Rhondda was once one of the most productive coal mining regions on Earth. Tens of thousands of miners, millions of tons of coal every year. Villages built around a single pit. The colliery was the job, the economy, the entire reason the village existed. When the pits closed, some gradually and some violently during the miners' strikes of the 1980s, those villages lost everything. Shops closed, pubs emptied. Young people left for Cardiff or London or anywhere with work. The population of some Rhondda villages dropped by half in a single generation. Today you can still find abandoned engine houses, sealed mine shafts, and the foundations of communities that only existed because of what lay beneath the ground. Number 9. Talisarn. In the Nantel Valley, the Dorothea Quarry kept expanding through the 1800s, and the village of Talisarn was directly in its path. Rather than stop digging, the quarry owners relocated the entire community a kilometer to the west. The original village was swallowed piece by piece. Today, the ruins of old Talisarn are still visible. Crumbling archways, stone walls, the outlines of houses that were simply in the way of progress. The Dorothea Quarry is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for roofing the 19th century world. But nobody mentions the village that had to die so the quarry could grow. Number 8. Llanwdyn. Before Capel Celyn, there was Llanwdyn. In 1888, Liverpool needed water for the first time and turned to Wales to get it. 3 inns, 2 chapels, 10 farmhouses, and an entire estate were flooded to create Llyn Vyrnwy. The church was demolished stone by stone before the waters rose. The community was scattered. A model village was built nearby for some of the displaced residents, designed to look pretty for visitors rather than feel like home. Like Capel Celyn decades later, the ruins of Llyn occasionally reappear during dry summers when the reservoir level drops and stone foundations break the surface like bones pushing through skin. We're not even halfway through, and it only gets darker from here. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button so you don't miss what comes next. Number 7. Llyn Vyrnwy. On the Llyn Peninsula, at the bottom of a valley so steep the road drops like a cliff face, there's a village that died and came back to life. Llyn Vyrnwy was a granite quarrying village, and for decades families lived here in near total isolation. When the quarry closed in the 1950s, everyone left. The village sat empty for 30 years, roofs caving in, walls crumbling, nature reclaiming every surface. Then, in the 1980s, a trust bought it and turned it into a Welsh language learning center. Today, people come from around the world to learn Welsh in what was once a ghost town. It's the only place on this list where the ghosts were replaced by something living. But visit outside of term time, and the eerie silence of that valley will remind you exactly what this place used to be. Number 6. Rhosydd. If you think Cwmorthin is remote, wait until you hear about Rhosydd, 1,500 feet above sea level, over 2 miles from the nearest road, 4 miles from the nearest village. And yet, for 80 years, over 200 men quarried slate here from deep inside the mountain. Some lived in purpose-built barracks on the exposed mountainside in one of the wettest locations in all of Wales. When the slate industry collapsed, they walked away. The workers' cottages still stand in ruined isolation, chimney stacks and window frames made entirely from slate. For miles around, there's nothing but rusting machinery, crumbling mill buildings, and the open mouths of tunnels that lead nowhere. Number 5. Cwmorthin. Deep in the mountains of Eryri, hidden in a valley most tourists never reach, the village of Cwmorthin sits beside a striking blue lake. The slate quarry here began in 1810, and at its peak, it was part of the largest and deepest slate mining complex in the world. Families lived in black-walled cottages built entirely from slate. The work was brutal. Between 1875 and 1893, 21 men died from a workforce of 550. The quarry earned the nickname the slaughterhouse. When demand collapsed in the 1940s, the village was abandoned. Today you can only reach it by hiking in or crawling through a dark, narrow tunnel cut into the mountainside. Most people have no idea it's there. Number 4. Castlemartin. On the far western tip of Pembrokeshire, there's a military range that's been off-limits to the public for decades. Castlemartin is one of the British Army's primary tank training grounds, and within its boundaries are the remains of farms and buildings that were cleared when the military took over. Like Epynt further up this list, the residents were promised they could return. Like Epynt, they never did. The range is occasionally opened for guided walks, and if you're lucky enough to get access, you'll find abandoned. Farmhouses standing in the middle of a live firing zone, frozen in time, surrounded by shell craters and tank tracks. Number 3. Mynydd Epynt. This one is almost completely forgotten. Mynydd Epynt was a mountain community of 54 farms in Powys. Over 200 Welsh-speaking people who had worked the same land for generations. They held eisteddfods. They gathered at Babel Chapel on Christmas morning before dawn, walking across the mountain with lanterns to sing carols at 6 in the morning. Then, in 1939, an army officer arrived. By Christmas, every farm had a notice on the doormat. The Ministry of Defense wanted 30,000 acres. The families had until April 1940 to get out. Many believed they'd come back after the war. One farmer, Thomas Morgan, walked back every single day to light a fire in his hearth, keeping the stonework from cracking. He did this for months, until 2 soldiers stopped him and told him they'd blown up his farmhouse. 80 years later, the MOD still owns every acre. Almost every building has been destroyed. All that remains is one abandoned pub, the Drovers, arms and a graveyard full of names nobody remembers. Number 2, Capel Celyn. This is the one that still burns. Capel Celyn was a village of 67 people in the Llyn Valley near Bala. A post office, a school, a chapel with a cemetery, 12 farmhouses. One of the last Welsh-only speaking communities in the country. In 1955, just before Christmas, the villagers opened their newspapers and discovered that Liverpool City Council planned to flood their entire valley for a reservoir. No one consulted them. Liverpool didn't even need Welsh planning permission. They pushed a private bill through Parliament. 35 of 36 Welsh MPs opposed it. Not one voted in favor. It passed anyway. The bodies in the chapel cemetery had to be exhumed and moved before the valley was flooded. Families watched as their ancestors were dug up so an English city could have cheaper water. By 1965, the village was gone, drowned beneath Llyn Celyn. Every few years during a dry summer, the water drops low enough to expose cracked foundations and tree stumps. People stand at the edge and stare at what's left. Cofiuch Dryweren, remember Dryweren, is painted on a famous wall near Aberystwyth. It became one of the most important political symbols in modern Welsh history. And it happened because 67 people weren't considered important enough to save. Number 1, the village that hasn't been found yet. Here's the thing about Wales. There are over 3,000 recorded deserted medieval villages in Britain, and Wales has never been fully surveyed. Entire settlements from the Middle Ages, farming communities, church villages, market towns, simply vanished over the centuries and were swallowed by the landscape. Some are visible only as crop marks from the air. Others are buried under fields that have been plowed for 500 years. Every year, archaeologists discover new ones. And that means somewhere in Wales right now, beneath a farmer's field or a hillside covered in bracken, there's a ghost town that nobody has found yet. Nobody knows its name. Nobody knows who lived there. And nobody knows what happened to them. That's the thing about ghost towns. The ones we know about are haunting enough. It's the ones we haven't found yet that should really keep you up at night. If this video showed you a side of Wales you didn't know existed, do me a favor, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Dust and Stories is just getting started, and next time we're heading somewhere even the locals are afraid to talk about. Like the video. Drop a comment telling us which place on this list hit you the hardest, and thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.